Alright, hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Star Wars Marker Balance. My name is Mark. I know I haven't gotten you guys Bad Batch reviews for the past couple weeks. It's been a combination of things. One, life has been a bit busier lately. And two, I feel like Bad Batch has been a bit on cruise control recently. I feel like the episodes have not been building the momentum as much as they should, especially going into the series finale this Wednesday. It seems like these last couple episodes have been kind of running out the clock just to get to the escape from Tantus and the liberation of the clones and the prisoners on Tantus. So I've just been slightly disappointed and not really motivated to come and talk to you guys about Bad Batch because I don't have too much to really say about these episodes outside the criticisms I have for them. And that's not to say that these episodes are bad or terrible pieces of Star Wars. It just feels like the season started with a lot more momentum going into the mid-season. I feel like it was really setting up for this explosive, exciting latter half to the final season. And I feel like it's been a little inconsistent with the Asajj Ventress episode and then these past couple weeks of just inching our way towards Tantus. And to be honest, if this last episode isn't an extended episode of 45 minutes to an hour, I really don't know how they'll wrap up this story in a very satisfying way. The last couple weeks have actually been shorter episodes than the other seasons. You know, last week I think was like a 22-minute episode, and then you take out the opening part and the end credits, and it really only was like an 18 to 19-minute episode. So that not only gets me nervous for what the length will be for this final episode, but it also kind of confirms what I said before this season when I predicted that this season, since it was the final one, that it would be a shorter amount of episodes, maybe 12 episodes in total, because the story was much more focused. There was probably going to be less adventure of the weeks, but it seems like the way they've kind of told the story here that they didn't have enough story, so they're just padding out episodes to get to whatever Disney ordered, whether Disney was like, we need 15 episodes, we need 16 episodes. It seems like they've kind of just done that and run out the clock to get to this 15 episode mark. And because of this final episode feeling like it needs to tie up a lot of loose ends, there's been a lot of discussion in the Star Wars community about this show ending because the Bad Batch's story is over, but this exploration of this time period between episodes 3 and 4 and the continuation of the Clone Wars show seems to be what they're trying to set up for a future show where the Bad Batch will still exist in this galaxy, but their story won't be pivotal to the broader goings on in Star Wars lore. When you think about all the threads that have been set up in these seasons with Senator Chuchi fighting for clones' rights, we see her at the beginning of this second half of the season. She pops up and it makes it seem like we're going to get more of that political intrigue around the Senate and senators defying Palpatine, but we haven't seen her, and I doubt she shows up next week. So that story thread is open to explore. Asajj Ventress showing up out of nowhere and testing Omega feels like it's setting something up for an Asajj Ventress focused show. The actress even said that we're going to have more Asajj Ventress content moving forward. I've theorized that she might be a part of the Hidden Path network where they're saving Force-sensitive beings, whether they be the children that we see on Mount Tantus or any others. And because Ventress and Quinlan Vos were obviously in love in the Dark Disciple novel, and we know that he's alive because in the Kenobi show we see his name written on the wall. He might be involved in the Hidden Path with Ventress, and they're both working together to save kids. So those threads are all open to be explored in a future show. And also there's been a emphasis on the underground and bounty hunters throughout Bad Batch, especially this season. We see Fennec, Cad Bane, Asajj Ventress as a bounty hunter. It seems like they're setting up a very broad show where we have the political intrigue of Senator Chuchi rallying senators against Palpatine and maybe the beginning of the rebellion or the early talks of the rebellion with Bail Organa. While that's going on, we could also have Asajj Ventress and the Hidden Path and Quinlan Vos all collecting Force-sensitive kids and keeping them safe from bounty hunters like Cad Bane and the Empire. Captain Rex obviously has a underground network of clone troopers and veterans, and what happens to them? Do we see that move forward? I doubt that gets wrapped up in this last episode, so he's out there as well, and we've seen he's worked with Senator Chuchi. So it seems like Bad Batch was a show that was able to flesh out these characters that were introduced at the end of Clone Wars, and their story is complete with Crosshair, Wrecker, and Hunter either dying or moving on and no longer being soldiers, and Omega making a decision to join Asajj Ventress or get involved in this broader goings-on in the galaxy. And so I respect that. Don't drag out their story if you want to focus on something else in this time period. So we'll close the book on the Bad Batch, and then the next series will be the Shadow of the Empire or something like that, where we tug on all of those threads that I just talked about, which I think would be really cool if they did that. And it feels like the tone for that show would be less kid-focused because we won't have really the lens that Omega had at the beginning of the show, and will really be more focused on the war, atrocities, stuff like that going on here. So very long-winded. I know I am not even talking about the last 3 episodes of Bad Batch right here, but I feel like this is the part of the show that I've been most interested in and really what I want to talk about here, because as I said, these 3 episodes, 12, 13, and 14, didn't do too much for me in the form of getting me really excited for the Bad Batch story. It kind of just feels like plot's been happening, we're going, but it's not hitting me as much as maybe some earlier episodes. So almost 7 minutes in, I'll finally do a nice recap of these 3 episodes. So essentially, Omega gets taken by the Empire again. She's back on Tantus, and she's introduced to the 4 sensitive kids that we saw were trapped on Mount Tantus and having tests done on them. We see the Bad Batch have to find Tantus. It's not on any star maps. It's not like there's coordinates for it. So they have to rescue Rampart, who gets introduced again, and surprised how much I've enjoyed him coming back. He's cocky, arrogant, but he's pretty funny and enjoyable to watch interact with the Bad Batch on the same side. So they break him out. They hitch a ride secretly to Tantus, and now they're working to infiltrate Tantus from the outside while Omega is working with the 4 sensitive kids on the inside to break themselves out. And that's kind of where we're at. I feel Omega's interactions with the other kids is nice, but again, I have some nitpicks with all of these people are monitoring these kids in the middle of the room, and somehow none of them can hear the conversations they're having about escaping together or working to escape. It feels like you have all these people monitoring a room that they would have microphones. Again, that might be a nitpick, but again, I don't think it is, because it's just logically, it doesn't make much sense. So that feels contrived that they're able to have these open conversations and none of the scientists pick up on it. As for outside Tantus, we see the Bad Batch get shot down and they're in the middle of the forest, and Bad Batch couldn't go one more week without a monster of the week, and a monster shows up, and that's how Rampart gets caught by the Imperials. Again, I feel like this show leans on the monster of the week format as a crutch for its writing. It doesn't seem to want to have these tension-filled character interactions that lead to the next plot point. It seems like they're so dependent on the monster of the week to accelerate the tension or create tension. And this is kind of a microcosm of that, because Rampart and the Bad Batch disagree on so many things, but the only thing that gets him to separate from them is a big monster, when they could have had this blowout argument and Rampart starts talking too loudly and then they get caught that way, or Rampart storms off and they don't know how to either stop him, they may threaten to shoot him, or something like that. I feel like the tension and conflict could have been done a lot better than just being like, let's throw a monster at him and accelerate it. Speaking of monsters, it looks like Omega's plan is going to be to release the Zillo Beast that they have in Tantus, and that will help destroy the facility. We've seen the Zillo Beast destroy a lot of things before, so that is not too much outside the realm of possibility. It is cool to see the Zillo Beast storyline not just be thrown away as a one-off. We see it here. I really like that episode, that horror alien-esque episode where they bring the Zillo Beast back. I thought that was a great episode of Bad Batch and actually elevated the Monster of the Week formula that they had been beating to death over the 3 seasons. I will say I have liked that Echo has been in the spotlight a bit more in these episodes. I've always been very critical of how they've treated Echo in this show. He feels like an afterthought. He doesn't feel like he's getting the screen time he deserves, because in Clone Wars, he was the boots-on-the-ground clone that we had known from the very beginning. Of course, Captain Rex was really the forefront of the clones as the face of the clones, but Echo and Fives were our best lens into the everyday clone. We saw them from cadets to being rookies to then being ARC troopers, and then them both meeting their apparent demises. Well, at least for Echo. He seemed to die, but he didn't. Five's definitely dead. But both of them were really cool lenses into the clone life, and it feels like Echo hasn't really been able to continue that journey here. He almost feels like a different character, which really sucks. But I'm glad he's the one to get them to Tantus. He's the one to have the conversation with Emery and convince her that all these kids are worth saving. You have a choice. You can make the change. You don't have to follow orders. I know what following orders causes when they're wrong. So shout out to Echo, my boy Echo. I don't think he's going to survive. I think he's definitely run his course, and I feel like his character will be at a very satisfying end if he does perish next week, getting everyone off Tantus. I was trying to think about anything else I'd want to talk about from these 3 episodes, but I really can't. Nothing's really coming to mind right now, so I'd rather just cut this off here instead of just dragging it out. So I hope you have enjoyed this very odd, structured episode of me more theorizing for future animated shows and only touching on Bad Batch briefly and giving some of my predictions for next week. I'm hoping we're getting an hour-long episode. I don't know if we are. They haven't reported how long the finale will be, but I'm very skeptical that all of the threads will be tied up in a satisfying way if it isn't a longer episode. And even if it is a longer episode, I do think that they are leaving a lot of open storylines to be explored in a future show that I'm hoping comes to fruition. As for who I think will survive next week, the big breakout from Tantus, I think Crosshair, because he's the easy answer to say he's the one that will die, I actually think he's going to be the only one that survives along with Omega. I feel like his journey makes you think that this is a crashing plane and he has his little redemption at the end, but he ends up dying to fulfill that redemption. I actually think he's going to survive and live to see his redemption, whereas Hunter and Wrecker are the ones that are going to perish, and it'll be sadder in that way because it feels like Hunter and Wrecker always did the right thing and they ended up paying the ultimate price, whereas Crosshair has done terrible things and he's the one that gets to survive. But it's more powerful that way, I think, at least. So I think Omega and Crosshair survive. I think the other members of the Bad Batch will die. Actually, I want them to. I don't know if Bad Batch, the show, has the stones to kill that many main characters, but I would like to see most of the crew not make it. I think that would be really impactful for the series finale. And I hope we get a little bit more insight into Tantus with Hemlock, maybe learn a little bit more about Hemlock. What's his hand? You know, has he done these zombie-type experiments on himself, and that's why he's so fidgety with his left hand? He wears the glove. Did he try and do it on himself? Does Emery escape and live with Omega and start a new life? I don't know. We'll wait and see. As I've said, the past 3 episodes have been okay to me. They haven't really felt like the series finale buildup that I was expecting, but that doesn't mean I'm not excited to see how they wrap up this series this Wednesday. So thank you for listening. As always, you can follow me on Instagram at @star_wars_mark of balance. We can talk some Star Wars on there. If you could please leave me a review on whatever streaming platform you're listening to it on, or tell all your friends and family that like Star Wars to come and check out an episode. I'm sure I have something on a topic they're interested in. I'd really appreciate it. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy, and may the Force be with you.